Technology has become a critical facilitator in driving optimization and efficiency across all sectors today, including the public sector enterprises. Technology leaders from government and PSUs have adopted niche technologies to drive innovation and transformation within their organizations. Tech adoption is seen as an investment in keeping the country competitive in an ever evolving global economy. In the next panel discussion, our experts will discuss the topic creating digital public enterprises through technological innovation. I would like to invite Arpit Gupta, Assistant Editor, ET Government, to moderate this panel discussion. Over to you, Arpit.
Dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of ET Government, the Economic Times, I welcome all our guest panelists. Respected panelists, it is indeed a great pleasure to meet you and have you in today's panel discussion titled Creating Digital Public Enterprises Through Technological Innovations. I am joined by eminent PSU leaders and industry experts. I welcome Mr. Prashant Kumar Mittal, Managing Director, National Informatics Center Services Incorporated, NIXI, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. I also welcome Ms. Shubha N. Bhamani, CPO, GAIL India Limited and Engineers India Limited. Dr. Yes, CISO of Indian Oil Corporation Limited. Mr. Anil Rawal, MD and CEO of IntelliSmart Infrastructure. Mr. Sridhar K, General Manager Digital, Kochi Refinery, BPCL. And Ms. Nidhi Pandey, CTO, Industry Verticals, HPE India. I once again welcome all the panelists. And let me begin the discussion by asking first question to Ms. Shubha N. Bhamani. Opening remark, ma'am, what is your initial remark on the digital transformation? Over to you.
This is indeed a very good forum to deliberate and give our views. So as we all are aware that digital transformation is one of the most significant mega trends of our time, on one which is continuing to grow up in scope and the scales. It is touching every aspect of our lives, individual as an organization. It is primarily a cultural transformation in any organization that involves integration of digital technology and digital mindsets into all areas of businesses, like growth strategies, consumer behavior, performance, new business models, and much more. It is not simple the replacement of the old tools, but embracing of IT and software to bring in the required transformation in the business processes. It is redefining the entire business strategy. It is reinventing the businesses. All organization, whether big or small, faces a choice for innovation or extinction. Digital transformation is single most powerful force, as I understand, which is affecting our world today and which will go on, keep on accelerating. It is very important for all the PSUs, all the organizations to consider technology not just as a support function, but as a strategic competency. Because digital transformation is not just applying technology to the business. It is actually about creating entirely new business models on the backbone of technology. So with this, if you want, I can tell about in EIL and GAIL, where I'm presently working as Chief Vigilance Officers. Digital transformation has helped a lot.
I'll come back to you, ma'am. Let me cover all the panelists by asking their opening remarks. Dr. Yes, what do you think and what are the areas you think there is a need for digital transformation?
Well, I think all the areas, given the current trend, the way companies are evolving, I think digital transformation, or for that matter, transformation itself, is not just the need of the hour for the excellence part. I think it is more about the survival now. The very survival of the companies are dependent on it. Typical manufacturing companies, historically, which they were promoting or presenting themselves as manufacturing firms, are now presenting them as technology firms. I think technology from being an enabler has now become a product. And what is happening that the transformation is happening not in the technology part, but the companies are getting transformed. I think this is going to play a very, very important role. As I said, it is a question of survival. All the domains, all the areas require a lot of innovation and transformation. And therefore, yes, it is very vital for the very survival. Thank you.
I would like to ask next question to Mr. Prashant Kumar Mittal, Managing Director, National Informatics Center Services Incorporated, NIXI. Mr. Mittal, as one of the digital transformation drivers, in your views, how government organizations are adopting enterprise applications as part of their ongoing reforms in India? Over to you, Mr. Mittal.
There has been a phenomenal growth in understanding of my governance people, both implementer and the citizen side. And now the requirement, understanding and technology tools are so grown that we have to go for enterprise solution. There are no other options, because with the percolation of social media and different payment channels, everybody understands that solutions can be integrated. So with the enterprise-based solution, integration is very easy. So it is every government department is coming up with the requirement of ERP solutions, and I foresee not only OEM-based enterprise solutions but also customized ERP solutions are having big market in government sector also.
Thank you, Mr. Rawal. Your opening remarks. What do you feel and think about digital transformation job?
Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for having me. It's a pleasure to be on this platform. And when it comes to digital transformation, let me tell you, I'll talk more about the power sector and the sector, which actually is demanding digital transformation in a large way. And let me tell you, as previous speaker said, this applies a lot on the power sector, because anything is to happen in distribution sector, which is the sector which is now asking for the transformation, and that has to be digital. Because when we talk about the current demand of the power sector or the particular distribution sector, about decarbonization as we know, and decentralization as we know, and democratization, the new trends, the new mantras of energy transition in the country, they all can only be achieved through 4D, which is obviously a digitalization. So this makes the base of the complete transformation in the power sector, and that I would like only to mention to start with. Thank you.
Mr. Sridhar, your opening remarks.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks, ET, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. So the digital transformation is emerging as a big driver for change around the world. And then our industries are also embracing it very positively. So if you look at the oil industry, or for that matter, any other industry, there is a lot of data generated around us, but 90% of the data is not being used for any purpose. So we are sitting on a big mountain over there. If that data is used for analysis and then making meaning out of that, then I think we are going to see a lot of change, be it in the oil industry or any other industry. So we are, as NBPCL, we are fast embracing these new technologies, and then we look forward to further discussion of this. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sridhar. Let us also understand the industry point of view here. Ms. Nidhi, how significant is the digital transformation for you, and which are the key areas you feel and you see technology is being adopted in a big way? Over to you.
I would like to thank ET for having me here to give HP as an opportunity to express what's happening in the industry, and also to learn from such an esteemed panel. We have quite an esteemed panel here. It's a mountain of experience that speaks out of it. The digital transformation that we see, I mean, the term, we've been hearing it for a long time. As Dr. Yask has already said, businesses are getting disrupted, and Ms. Shubha has also said that the business models themselves are evolving. So what has become is that it has become a lifeline right now. So if we start looking at it purely from technology perspective, we would see a lot of incumbent players when we start looking at businesses have got disrupted with technology businesses. So the brick and mortars, now we just, think of a pandemic almost a decade ago, and I don't know what we would have not been able to imagine doing things so seamlessly out here. So there is where the technology comes into play. And for a country like ours, there are a lot of initiatives that have happened in the public sector. There's a lot of citizen services that have been rolled out that are not available globally. So I mean, that's something to be proud of, that we as a country with the kind of mammoth, the population that we have, the kind of massive, diversity we have in terms of the skills to utilize any kind of technology, is we have still been able to mobilize certain solutions here. The major trends that we see on the digital transformation are something that are not new or not being heard ever. But there are a lot of overlinks, like things are evolving. So these concepts are also getting refined in per se. So what we start talking about, we were talking digital transformation at one point of time. And like Mr. Sridhar said, that 90% of data is getting unutilized. When you start looking at it, the prime theme that is going on in digital transformation is data-driven digital transformation. Let's start unlocking the potential of data. When we start looking at what we're sitting around, let's break those silos. Let's start looking at technology more as an enabler and start having probably a process optimization, start looking at maybe a sensor driven, have more, IoT kind of a telemetry, which helps us bring that value we see. And we are able to, I mean, in the times, the kind of testing that is happening, the genome analysis, and there is a lot of potential that we see in all industries across, not just the, probably in oil and gas, which is where most of the esteemed panel is from, but the public sector as a large, when we start looking at the masses, that the way they're going to be impacted is going to be huge from digital transformation perspective. So all I would say as a closing remark is, I mean, though it is a term that has been being spoken of and everybody was in some or the other way in journey, be it a technology company or be it a company which is not technology native, the current times have really propelled us into, where it's not an option anymore. So it has become an integral part of the strategy, and that's a very good situation to be in for a technology and a technologist. That's something that we are happy about, that there are a lot of things that can be leveraged to bring value on the table for businesses that we would probably see unlocking in future.
Thank you, Ms. Nidhi. We would like to know more in the later part of the discussion. I'll go back to Ms. Shobha Bambani. Ma'am, Engineers India Limited has emerged as a design, engineering and turnkey contracting company in areas of petroleum refining, petrochemicals, chemicals, and many other areas. You are also diversifying into the new areas, including city gas distribution. To your credit, you have completed more than 5,000 assignments and projects. So how significant is the digital transformation for this Engineer India Limited PSU? Over to you, ma'am.
Yes, Mr. Arpit. As we know that Engineers India Limited is an engineering and project management consultancy organization, which has realized the benefits of the automation, digitalization as early as its inception, that is in 1980s. This premier PSU had its computer system engineering labs since then, which is developing its own softwares for design and other activities of the project management. It has been building up its capabilities, digital capabilities, IT capabilities continuously, and it's way ahead in IT-enabled processes and systems for integrated project management. Anything, it has helped EIL in delivering the quality projects in time from one project to another project. And this has also helped in maintaining the time schedules, the cost optimization in today's market competition, along with the resource optimization. It has made the repeat engineering a very easy task, which reduces the considerable time while doing engineering for the similar type of projects, similar items, other than maintaining the high standards of the accuracy. Also, this digital transformation has come in a very smooth way, in a smooth, transparent, and a faster procurement cycle, making it easy in availability of the material, equipment, and anything which invites the delays on accounts of any limitations, ambiguities, non-transparent procurements, etc. Overall, with this particular aspect of transformation, that to digital transformation, since its early inception stage, EIL has gained a lot. And with regard to, if we talk about the other organization, that is GAIL, it is working towards leveraging this cutting edge digital technologies and advanced analytics for almost everything, for supporting the decision making, that is effective decision making, for improving the efficiency, the safety, incorporating sustainability, building a scalable and agile enterprises. So in short, digital transformation journey for both these organizations are very critical, very important, and definitely showing the results in its outputs in projects.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing these very pertinent details about EIL. In the later part of discussion, I would also like to know something from the GAIL perspective as well. Now I am moving to Dr. Yes. Dr. Yes, in terms of digital transformation, what do you feel which are the first areas after the COVID-19 pandemic disrupting the world?
I think with or without the pandemic, the areas for the organizations, see, there are a couple of things that have been pointed out by the fellow panelists. I would answer your question based on the inputs given by the fellow panelists. They talked about the data part, the processes. I think these are the areas which an organization would now have to focus on. And if we talk about digital transformation, it should not always be from an end user's perspective, not something that can be, see, that's end user is a very, very important aspect to any organization's working and functioning. It is important that all the customers are given a seamless experience. You know, we are now seeing, especially during the pandemic, last 1 year or so, we've seen that the users are wanting the experience from plethora of devices. You know, there are so many flavors of, let's say, an operating system which are now existing, and everybody is wanting the same kind of an experience, a seamless one. However, the transformation is not just towards that part. There are integral internal parts, especially the data and the processes, which are very important in considering as to how and what kind of a digital transformation is to be adopted. Just to give you an example, you know, in the processes, what I personally see is that we are moving from a reactive reactive approach to a predictive approach, and that is all of that is happening because of the data that is being analyzed. You know, it's a mix of process transformation and utilizing and analyzing the data. About a decade back, I don't think so it was possible for anybody to even think of predicting the next stoppage in a particular equipment that is going to happen. Now, because I am able to leverage that data, analyze it, predict as to when the next probable failure is going to happen, my processes are getting far better, which probably might or may not be seen by the end customer, but yes, they are certainly felt by them. The overall operational efficiency is increasing. So the point is that the digital transformation, I think, has to focus on the internal aspects as well. And this is where this is the part which I feel is going to play a lot of important role in the coming years, probably. The reinventing processes, utilizing the data, and one last part, what has to be focused is the human resource part. You know, all of this is tightly integrated or bound only by a very expert human resource which is working on it. So I think a transformation on the intelligence or the human capabilities is also something that organizations would be focusing on. Thank you.
Mr. Prashant Kumar Mittal, my next question to you is, which are the top trends and emerging technologies Nixi is pursuing for your partners, clients in India and abroad?
As such, we are not promoting any OEM, and we are more concerned about the open source tools, open source technologies. And so it should not be good for me, wise for me to name some technologies. But yes, there are market leaders in every technology verticals, and we are supporting our users with the best of possible options available in the market.
And now I would move to Mr. Rahul. Mr. Rahul, your organization is a joint venture between NIIF and EESL, that is known to all. And you are, this organization has been established with a mission to give a fillip to the smart metering program in India. So how the smart metering project is shaping up, and can you please also highlight the digital transformation journey of your organization?
Thanks a lot. So before I come to smart metering, let's understand the perspective of a distribution sector, the power sector, and more than that, the consumer. Right. So when it comes to these things, we have been hearing about these things a lot. But if you just try and look a bit deeper, we have large mass of consumers in this country, which we may not be really realizing, who really don't get the power even today, despite the fact that we know that the country, all villages is now connected. All villages connected, frankly, does not mean all households connected. And all household connected also does not mean that all citizens of this country getting power. There's lots of difference between these three levels of understanding. What we are doing is to fill this gap of we being a country with all villages connected and all consumers, or all consumer, I won't say, all citizens getting the quality power. There's a huge journey which is to be traveled between the two these things, which actually seem like quite apparently similar, but they are not similar, right? And that's the journey of empowerment. That's the journey of energy democratization, which I refer to. If I have so much of power in this country, which we say today is surplus, right? I'll not go into that debate whether it's surplus or not, but we claim it like that. Whether then my every citizen in the country is able to, number one, access that. Number two, if they can access, if whether they can consume, it's in that price range. Whether they have the purchasing power capacity to really buy that power. How do you enable that consumption to be done by that person? Because energy is no more a luxury. Power is no more a luxury. It is now next to roti, kapda, and makan. We all know very well, because now if the mobile has reached to every guy, then energy has also to reach. That's the gap we are trying to fill at the bottom level, grassroots level. And how we are doing that is through digitalization. Now it's very interesting to connect that hi-fi kind of world with this basic world of the people, which actually are not getting the power. And this actually is through the reducing that loss. Let me tell you, huge quantum of power energy gets lost from the generation and till the time it reaches to consumer. If we can capture this loss, reduce it by even 50%, it will not only increase the purchasing power, because the cost of the power delivered will go significantly down. It will also enable the whole value chain to be far more efficient and far more capable. Right. If I can just simply say today, when we generate 100 units of power in a very simple layman language, if I say at the generation end, I hardly as distribution company able to realize revenue for 60% of it. That basically means 40% of it getting evaporated in the process through various means, right, which actually are across the value chain, and largest of it is in the lowest end of it, that's the distribution sector. And whatever is in the distribution sector, which is around 30% of it, 50% of this 30%, I would say, is due to the fact there's lots of stealth happening by unscrupulous people, which actually it's just taking away, stealing the power from the needy by the people who don't want to pay, under the assumption that power is for free. These are two important things to be realized in this country now, that power is no more free. But then it can go very cheap. It can go very, very low in prices if we really reduce this stealth happening on the power and really rationalize and optimize the consumption, right? That can be done through the smart metering part. And that's where we are working on. How it does, I'll just give two examples without getting too deep or too elaborate on this. It actually measures power. If we have to provide subsidy, then we measure the consumption, provide the subsidy direct to the account. That's the main drive which Government of India is now doing. And we want to help government in really reaching to this. This can only be done when I measure. because there is no measurement. A large mass of people are either hooking, they are really doing the ensuring that quality of power is very bad. Some of the people who want to pay cannot pay because power is not reaching. Once you really start measuring this and start rationalizing the pricing, the distribution companies also get lots of health in terms of operational financial efficiency. They do better network, and that's the power making power reach to every consumer. That's one thing. Second thing is, we still have the conventional kind of meters which actually won't need to be visited. Once the visit of the person comes into picture, then lots of I would say known bona fide activities start coming into the picture, right? And that also, particularly during COVID times and the kind of pandemic we have seen, it actually exposes lots of manpower to unnecessary activity, and the households also. So this all can be avoided through this digital intervention through smart metering, because smart meters are special in the sense that they have the two-way communication. They communicate data from the consumer end to the distribution company, and distribution company end to the consumer end, right? Then there is frankly no need of interface, personal interface on a daily basis. Lots of unbona fide or non-bona fide activities could be avoided. There are digital and data analytics available, which actually can capture many consumption behavior patterns. And smart meter has another major edge, which is are linked to sustainability, and that's the rooftop. If you have the rooftop today, you don't really like it much, because it does not yield you beyond the heating the part of it. If rooftop is of use, if you can produce power and sell it to the grid. For selling it to the grid, it requires something which measures the power, and these smart meters are two-way. They are called net meters also. But if I put some solar rooftop on my roof and I generate over and above my consumption, I can pump the power into the grid. That basically it becomes a revenue for me, right? And that enablement, in the country we have achieved lots of renewable, but solar rooftop we are not able to do much, because we are missing on this critical part of the story, that there's no way this measurement could be done, that there's no way where grid can pay back to the consumer. This payback process, this sustainability process is promoted by the smart metering. That's our mission. Actually, we are trying to do the digitalization should yield consumption patterns, consumption behavior, consumer-based requirements, time of use, net metering, better financial and operational health for distribution sector, and over and above need-based charging. Folks, I'll just give you another example. In Bihar, we have about 1.5 lakh smart meters, which are prepaid smart meters. During pandemic times, we have observed that people are charging by 10 rupees, 20 rupees, depending on the need. That's the empowerment. I need not be paying a fixed amount of, say, 500 rupees, 300 rupees, or 100 rupees. I can charge as much as I want. If today I have 40 rupees, I can charge 40 rupees. So we found during the COVID time, there was an average of 20 rupees per consumer per day recharging. That's just like early times of mobile, if you recall. In prepaid mobile, people used to charge for 10 rupees, 20 rupees, depending on the need. That's what the empowerment is, that I charge it as much as I need. If I don't need, I don't charge. And these are the enablements, at the grassroots level, which we are trying to carry through this digitalization process. This all is possible only through this data, enablement and digitalization on the ground. That's what I want to say.
Right, sir. They are very ambitious plans, and you have really been undertaken very good initiatives. We will discuss shortly in the later part of the panel discussion. Now, going to Mr. Sridhar. Mr. Sridhar, your organization is investing in world-class technology. Can you also share some of your ongoing plans? Where are you adopting the technology?
As you said, Bharat Petroleum, Go GDP is the corporate vision for our digital transformation. When we say GDP, the D stands for digital, and G is for green, and P is for petrochemical. So we are big into petrochemicals, and we are actually making our refineries as well as our supply chain, full supply chain intelligent through digital transformation. So when I say refineries are intelligent, it means that actually our decisions are driven by historical data-based models as well as current data. So this data is being used for building models, and then we are able to predict the future. So we are able to predict the future, and then we are able to based on the previous behavior, how my plant is going to operate, how my supply chain is going to behave. Based on that, actually, we are going to take some intelligent decisions, and that will actually give more benefits to the organization. So when we want to implement these, actually, in a few areas which we see for improvement are our health, safety, and environment. That is, safety is of paramount importance to an organization like us. So that is where actually we want to see a lot of improvements, and as well as productivity, the manpower productivity improves. And the last but not the least is the bottom line, that is the profit. So by implementing latest state-of-the-art technologies, like whether it is artificial intelligence, machine learning, or IIoT, I mean, these have immense possibilities for taking the industry to a giant leap. And actually, we are very closely working with academia. So I would like to mention here the current gap that is existing between the corporates and the academia. So we are closely working with very premier institutes like IITs, NITs, as well as startup companies that are incubated by these institutes and state governments. So we are working very closely with them so that whatever new techniques or technologies that are available can be put to immediate use, and they can be maybe made into a big product, so that the industry as well as the startups benefit. So this collaboration between academia, industry, and the startup companies is actually going to be a big game changer in the times to come.
Definitely, Mr. Sridhar. And now I would again go back to Ms. Nidhi. Key growth for public sector in India would be definitely the technology and innovations. What do you feel how HP can support public sector in terms of innovation and high power computing like cloud computing? Over to you.
I have been listening to all the fellow panelists, and that's a very interesting and a lot of points that they've put across is what I would have talked about in technology. So it's a good thing that a lot of use cases have been talked about already. For HP, the commitment to public sector is very, very strong. We already engaged in various levels in enabling certain citizen services, and so their engagement runs really deep for us. We are committed towards the engagement in public sector, not just from the perspective of bringing out new things, but what is happening now even at the technology end. The technology also, as the businesses are grappling that how to build more sustainable businesses, how to really bring technology in it. Technology also is evolving really fast for the technology providers also. So there's a lot of innovation and R&D work that happens around it. Like in the beginning, when the intro you had asked, what are the technology trends we are looking at? I said that the trends largely that we're talking about are not something that have not been there. They've been there for a really long time. When you talk about data analytics, data science, you talk about cloud, those pieces have already been there. What from HP perspective has happened, we've realized that there's too much happening in the technology that from our customers' perspective, consuming these could actually become a big complex, a Herculean kind of a task. So the shift is now more towards giving a completely wow customer delight kind of an experience when you experience these technologies. So in the recent times, I mean, just a couple of days back, and all, if you follow HP's launches around the products and solutions, our commitment is being realized in terms of the launches that we are doing. Be it, when we talk about that we would give you a unified, data services console kind of thing. So you don't have to, worry about where is your storage, what is happening. So we are trying to do that piece a lot for the customers itself. For now, everybody who we are taking out these technologies to, they can really free up their minds from grappling with this and really do the application part of it, as we saw all the fellow panelists talk of. Not just that, there's a lot in terms of commitment happening when we start looking at these new areas as they're emerging. Not everybody, once we take a step, the first step when we take towards the technology, it's not easy for us to plan out in advance telling this is what we plan to do with the technology. And that's something HP has understood. And I'm sure my fellow panelists would have heard the Green Lake term that we have, where our commitment is by the end of 2022, next year, we would actually unleash all our product portfolio will be available in an as a service model. So we are looking at giving a managed services experience to the technology buyers, to the technology consumers, so that they can really focus on solving the problems that would bring value rather than grappling with the technology. As Mr. Sridhar also indicated, and Dr. Yask also talked about, the skill levels on the end that the corporate needs to build skills also, because people also have to change. Now that's another thing. We have we are doing investment in terms of having advisory to implementation services to be able to partner. So that commitment, when we start looking at from the public sector, it's really, really strong on the HP bit. And the cloud computing, we are taking the definition a little bit ahead, because public sector has its own needs in terms of the sensitivity of the geo-residence of data, how much of control you want around the assets and pieces around that. That's where our as a service, opening up entire portfolio as a service by next year comes to rescue, that you get the cloud experience that you would think of at your doorstep. So that's the commitment that is coming on from HP's end, and we wish to contribute in more areas, taking up even solving business problems, because we are lining up the technical expertise even from advisory to implementation and to bring that to the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nidhi. And after this first round of questions with each panelist, now coming back to Ms. Shubha Bambani for the second round of questions. And I would request all the panelists to please keep your answers as short as possible, so that we can also conduct the third round of questions. Ms. Bambani, GAIL India is currently engaged in development of city gas distribution networks in Varanasi, Uttar Pradesh, Patna, Bihar, Ranchi, and some other districts in Jharkhand, some districts in Odisha. What is the status of those projects? Can you please highlight?
Yes, I just can tell you something in short, because these projects of city gas distribution is not being done directly by GAIL Gas Authority of India Limited. This is from one of our subsidiary, that is GAIL Gas. GAIL Gas is the city gas distribution company, a joint venture and the subsidiary also, you can say. So in Bihar, that is in Patna, and in UP, Varanasi, already this Jagdish Haldia pipeline is laid there. So both PNG as well as the CNG operations have already been started there. That means the customers, the public of those places are getting through online mode this PNG as well as CNG. But whereas in Ranchi and this East Singham, the Jharkhand, and Cuttack, and this other place you told, Odisha, they have this pipeline projects are still to be completed. So that means, but still the gas is being supplied, that is being done through virtually. That means through cascades. Gases are being pumped through some cascades to a particular station, and from there it is being distributed manually. So operations have started, but they have started only virtually. However, this will do till the time this pipelines work is completed, I think, shortly. So that's all for with regard to the city gas companies, GAIL Gas, which is distributing there in these areas.
Thank you for sharing the details of these initiatives. I would now go to Dr. Yes. Dr. Yes, I would simply like to understand from your point of view how technology is enabling productivity in terms of day-to-day operations in the corporate and government sector.
Right. So, the technology has evolved at a very rapid pace. In fact, I think Ms. Nidhi Pandey pointed out about the technology and the potential, the raw potential that these technologies have. But the point is that although they are becoming very easy to understand, the likes of these AIs, we have been talking about AI for quite some time now, the likes of these IoTs, the blockchains, and all of these newer things that are coming. The point is that they are becoming, although easy to understand, but adopting these technologies, aligning them to the corporation's requirements, internal processes, is not that easy. It is a very complex process. Each and every technology, no matter how easy it appears to be, there are. I'll give you a typical challenge when it comes to adopting technologies. All these organizations have a lot of legacy applications, legacy technologies. Now, transforming them and adopting an absolutely new one becomes a huge and a daunting task. Your question was about what kind of technologies are being adopted. As I mentioned, these IoTs of the world, these AI, these ML, and again, if you look at whether it is AI, ML, or blockchain or IoT, it involves a lot of human interference. And I think what is important to understand is that this transformation, even if it is dependent on technology, has to be organic in nature. The human resource within the organization, the internal team is the one which would bring about these changes. So I think more than the technology, what I believe is that in the next couple of years, what we are going to focus on is changing the culture within the organization, trying to adopt and bring in the best of the technology, and the deep rooted culture is something that has to be changed. So although we talk about, when we talk about this transformation, we talk about people, process, technology, and data. Again, as I say, I think the key aspect in transformation is the human part and the cultural change. This is where the focus is going to be.
Mr. Prashant Kumar Mittal, I would like to know from you, as we all know that you are representing India for pushing NIC's best products and solutions in overseas markets. What has been your experience so far in dealing with international markets?
It could have been a good day for us, but unfortunately, since I took over as MD, I am fighting with the COVID pandemic situation, and we are supporting government in fighting the basic need of human. We have to live, and making their life to breathe easily. I am my department and my organization working more on health aspects, health related aspect, and so at present I'm not comfortable to pinpointedly come across a good proposition for international market, but yes, e-office has become a leader, which is electronic office, which relieves you from attending office physically. And this is one of the tools which can be marketed internationally. It is very cost effective tool as compared to other such solutions internationally available. In addition to that, we are having Service Plus, which has earned accolades for international platform. This is another end-to-end workflow-based system, which can be put to use within 15 days for any e-governance applications. Likewise, we are having the prison control system, which is very much required in developing countries. So we are having many of such products which are time tested, proven in country of 135 plus crore of population. So I think in any country, my technology, my architecture can be seamlessly integrated or implemented without any problem.
I would now go back to Mr. Anil Rawal by asking him, sir, smart meters will be the foundation for smart grid program, which will be crucial to meet challenges of the newly evolving energy mix and the target of providing uninterrupted 24/7 power supply to users. Who are your key partners, stakeholders in the smart meters program that is currently being rolled out by the Intellism?
First of all, my partners and stakeholders are distribution companies. Who are my users, my clients? Let me tell you, massive transformation is slowly, gradually creeping in the power sector in last about a year, and slowly it's picking the pace. We know that this country underwent a major transition when we did so much of generation. Then we had the second leg in terms of renewable, which is still on. right? When we are now a significant leader across the world in this renewable transformation, then we did extremely good job in transmission sector in the country, which is conduit for taking this power to the consumer. But we've somehow lagged on the consumer end side, and this transformation is now on in a large manner. And as you talk about partners, and as very good point you made, is that smart meters are the base for smart grid. Let's just in a sentence understand smart grid. Smart grid is just a responsive grid to the demand and supply. It can respond quickly on either side. Now that's a very small statement made. It has a massive digital backend on the both sides of it, right? And that's we are small part of it. We are trying to enable through smart metering and the related ahead of meter and back of the meter, functionalities. When it comes to my partners, and as I said, the distribution companies are my number one partners. And then in addition to that, we have various digital partners, starting from meter manufacturers, starting from cloud service providers, and going to telecom service providers, and then head-end system providers, firmware providers, and then the billing system, and the software companies, data analytics. We are doing lots of work on data analytics because we are going to sit in a huge database once we start getting this kind of 15 minutes data. So every 15 minutes consumption data is now traveling from consumer end to the distribution end. How you use it, how you analyze it, what kind of consumption behaviors come out of it, what do you do with those behaviors, all those lots of analytics is happening at our end. We are trying to create pilot cases, use cases which can actually generate additional revenue for the distribution company. So all those researchers, analytical companies are our partners. So it's a huge ecosystem we are trying to move. It has its own inertia due to various reasons that distribution companies maybe not be the best paying partner as on date. That's why we have come out with the OPEX model. The OPEX model is a typical model where a client does not invest anything to start with. They pay when they really start making money out of the solution. That's what we call pay as you say, or a OPEX model where we invest. That's why I have a huge pedigree of NIF kind of investor with us, where we invest, we install the whole program, we start make it running, we handhold the distribution company, we operate and maintain, and the benefits which emerge out of it, based on that they pay the monthly fee to us. So that's why that's the OPEX program. So this is requiring a huge ecosystem to move. It's a huge elephant, let me tell you, and there are too many components of it. But our aim is to make them come together, gel in a manner that it becomes a large engine with various components, gelling together and trying to make this massive distribution sector move towards a positive direction. And that's what we are trying to do. Thank you.
Mr. Sridhar, now I would like to ask you a very direct question. Your Kochi refinery of BPCL is implementing digital transformation in its operation for improving safety standards and bettering its refining margins, as well as to meet the growing demand of petroleum products. How significant are these initiatives?
I think these initiatives are very, very significant to our bottom line. So as you said, the interventions by usage of drones and other cameras actually has improved on the safety performance a lot. So earlier, whatever incidents that are going unnoticed were getting actually can be caught by these CCTV cameras, and then using analytics, the alerts can be generated, and then immediately the incidents. The number of incidents can be significantly brought down on the safety front. So that automatically improves the productivity of the personnel at work. And regarding the process operations, actually my colleagues were mentioning, Mr. Yask and Ms. Nidhi were also mentioning usage of AI, ML and IoT. So any process unit actually makes money only when it is running, not when it is shut down or limping. So all these new techniques, AI, ML, and then IoT based solutions have actually helped us improve our productivity in terms of yield improvement, reliability improvement. So we can actually predict when a machine is going to fail and then take a preventive action or proactive action to avoid any failures. And apart from these, actually this COVID-19 has actually, maybe in a way we can say that it has hastened our process of digital transformation. So in the last 1 year, maybe when we started somewhere in the April last year, so we were actually planning a catalyst changeover in one of our units. And that time immediately the restrictions came in and licenses from other countries could not travel. So it was a very short time for us, and we could innovate in a way that actually catalyst changeover process is completed smoothly. And even now, recently, last 2-3 months, actually, our petrochemical plants commissioning with a lot of devices and a lot of new technologies, augmented reality and virtual reality technologies. Actually, we could commission our petrochemical units. So this has actually helped us improve our bottom lines. So there are actually a lot of technologies. Actually, COVID has helped us actually in innovating further. This has actually hastened the process of our digital transformation in the last 1 year. So there are AI, ML, IoT based solutions, and then drones is also one thing where actually it was taking a lot of time earlier for any inspections. Actually, using drones, we can do some thermal imaging and then get an immediate report. So on all these fronts, actually, the technologies are helping all industries, and actually there is a long way to go on this.
Thank you, Mr. Sridhar. Let me now go back to Ms. Nidhi. Ms. Nidhi, in today's scenario of intense geopolitical competition, it is extremely critical for the users that the public sector to remain vigilant for any cyber threat or cyber attack. How HP can help in ring fence and make more secure environment for these industries, especially using emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning? Over to you.
Thanks, Albert, for the question. It's an interesting question because while we keep talking, specifically for the public sector perspective, we keep talking of digital, the security, imminent security threat comes into mind. Geopolitical, non-geopolitical, they are always non-state actors or, anti-social actors, which would like to make use of those breaches or, any kind of loopholes. So security is a very, very important part that we start looking at. The way we at HP look at security is more around security by design. So we look at bringing products that have baked in security. So when we're talking about the infrastructure, we have silicon root of trust is what we're talking about. That's how seriously we feel that the security piece needs to be in as a part of an intent itself when we are actually designing our products, rather than being an afterthought when things are, or when breaches we are realizing. So that's a bit around security. Not just that we have a full-fledged, like I said, because we also realize that not every enterprise would have their own skill staff for things. So we have our practices around where we do, security advisory to implementation, managed security kind of offering for the consumption of the large scale customers, so that they can get the benefit of the experience that we have, that would be us saying, and we can bring that value to the table, advising the right way to secure. Just be it from the networking end, where securing the network or the WANs, and going on to probably we have partnerships to leverage even, because most of the panelists are from oil and gas, I'll take the liberty to talk about it, that we do have, because there are more niche players that are into the security solutions around it. So we have complementing technologies. We try to bridge these two pieces together, IT/OT, bring them together, make them secure together. So we have strategic partnerships that we've invested in to bring that level of security, securing even as the OT part becomes open. It becomes more secure also, that the security is thought about. So that's the bit is what HP is doing from security perspective. Security by design is what we breathe, and rest follows through in all our products. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Nidhi, for highlighting these very pertinent things. Now, since we are almost at the end of the discussion, I would just go to each panelist for the closing remark, and I would request you to please be as short as possible. So 45 seconds to each panelist. I would go to first go to Ms. Shobha Bhammani. Ma'am, how do you see the digital transformation in the operations of PIL and GAIL India? Your closing comments.
you are giving very short time for this big thing. In GAIL, this journey has started in 2016 with the name Digital Yatra, which is nothing but integration of operational technologies with the IT systems for taking an effective and informed data-driven decisions in the organization. And for this, all the cutting technologies, advanced analytics have been used for the important digital touchpoints like operational excellence, health safety, collaboration, customer engagement, you name it, it is for that. And some of the very key important digital initiatives were e-measurements like Anjani, Anand for real-time monitoring of the MOU parameters, B2B integration of GAIL with ONGC and other oil PSUs, and lot many. So this journey is always there, and as a part of digital strategy, the PSU is identifying many digital initiatives in the Analytics Center of Excellence, in cloud-enabled solutions, augmented reality, virtual reality. Some of these initiatives are being done in this year, depending upon the business requirement. So there is a plan, again, as Ms. Nidhi was telling, to have a common digital security operation centers, which will cater the cybersecurity needs of IT, OT, and SCADA domains, which is again in the high level, in line of the high level of the digital maturity. But I just would like to bring, as a chief vigilance officer of these Bharatna and Navratna companies, I see embarking on the digital transformation will definitely bring the direct benefits in terms of increased efficiency, because the processes have become more efficient, more streamlined. It will bring the enhanced transparency because they are all fully integrated technologies, single source of data, improved dashboards, reporting, business intelligence capability. So I see distinct advantages with this digital transformation in these big organizations, proper checks and balances. Integrated business solution brings the adequate checks balances. So my work, my job as a vigilance officer gets smoother. So then I'll say that this should be considered. This digital transformation should be considered eventually, and not as a necessity, but as the issue of a survival of any organization. And very important for any organization and each organization to come up for this change. But changes are also not welcome. As we all know, it's not very straightforward. So in my opinion, and that is my last comment in this session, is first and foremost is success of any digital transformation. It will depend upon the top management sponsorship. It has to be top driven. I'll just end up by saying a famous quote by Charles Diven: it is not the strongest of the spices that survives, nor the most intelligent one. It is the one that is most adaptable to the change. So we have to adopt the stage of digital transformation in our lives, in our organizations. Thank you.
Very well said, ma'am. And it's a continuous journey. Thank you, Ms.
Yes.
Shubha Bambani, for sharing your valuable thoughts. Now I would go to Dr. Yes. Dr. Yes, digital transformation comes with own challenges. So what are those challenges that you see, and how to address them using technologies? What do you? Your closing comments.
Yeah, so it's just a 45 seconds saying the one challenge that I think is the most prominent one is, in fact, two. One is the fear of failure. That is something that people, the organizations have to realize and do away with. The second is the clinging on to the traditions. I think whatever tradition, whatever historically has happened, and whatever is there today is something that one has to realize is all that is true. What is going to happen in the next 5 years is entirely different. We have to see the companies, bigger companies like Apple, which now generate almost 50% of their, or more than 50% of their business from the products which are not existing just 4 or 5 years back. That is the key. Transformation is not something that is to be done once. It is a continuous process. You already pointed that out. For that continuous process, involvement from the internal team is to be there. The fear of failure has to go. The fear of cannibalization has to go. They have to adopt if they have to survive. That's all. Thank you.
Very well said, Dr. Yes. If we have to survive, we have to adopt. I would like to ask next question to Mr. Prashant Kumar Mittal. How do you see commercial opportunities for India's digital platforms and e-governance products and solutions in global market? And what are your roadmap and your ongoing international projects, if you can just shed light on those?
That OEM-based solution, OEM-based ERP it comes with a huge cost. And in India, we have come across various solutions which have been time tested, which have been proven and catered the population of 135 plus crore. So these systems can be implemented in any country. So I foresee that with the reasonable cost and the time tested platforms, we can reach out in every field of e-governance. Especially, we have done lot many things in artificial intelligence based solution building and data analytics. These are the two core areas where I see ample opportunity. Every developing country needs such solutions, so total cost of ownership of governance can be reduced. So I see that though it is a challenge, it is challenging, but certainly with our experience in working different difficult domains, we would excel there.
Now taking this to Mr. Rawal. Mr. Rawal, what are your priorities for the current financial year in terms of digital transformation?
Thanks a lot. My priority is to spread out with this digital transformation on the distribution sector to whatever extent I can go. It's endless journey. This country has more than 250 million households. Every household is to be reached. Mission is really, really large. Initiation has been made. It's a very successful initiation. I would say we have already done about 17, 18 lakh meters. It's a long journey, and wherever we have done, we have been able to transform the financial efficiency of the distribution companies. They have been coming and vouching for this across the platforms, and our journey is long, but we are getting ready for this, and we are prepared to take on, and we will strive to take it as far as possible to every consumer standing in the queue. That's all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Rawal, and we wish you all the best for your future endeavors. Mr. Sridhar, the same question to you. What are your priorities for the current fiscal?
For the current fiscal, actually, we are going big on implementation of the technologies we talked about earlier: data analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, and then building up intelligent models for refineries and supply chains. But apart from the implementation of these technologies, one or two things which are really important, which are not maybe Shubha ma'am has already touched upon. One thing is on the governance front. So we are actually going big on process like robotic process automation. So when these things are getting implemented, one should be very careful that all governance is fully taken care, because AI, ML, and other RPAs can actually throw up some decision points. But whether are they in line with our corporate governance? So that is one thing which needs to be taken care of. And the second one we are focusing on is developing the culture as such. So we can talk for a long time about technologies, but then as Mr. Yask was also earlier pointing out, the culture needs to be changed. So people should believe that actually these changes can benefit personnel as well as the organization itself. So I think these two are the key priorities on the change management when we are implementing all the technologies which we were discussing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sridhar, for sharing your inputs. And before summing up, I would again go back to Ms. Nidhi. Ms. Nidhi, Indian public sector is focusing on self-reliant more under Atmanirbhar Bharat as part of the local initiative. What is HP's position on supporting it and working on it while aligning with the public sector's priorities? Over to you.
Thanks, Arpit. The self-reliant country, we believe that it's comprises of a lot of things that we're talking about, like Mr. Anil has talked about, smart metering. It's a fully ecosystem. It sounds easy, but there are a lot of partnerships that are being aligned, lots of components that are being aligned there. And that's where we as HP have, launched a program which is the Digital Catalyst program. What we're looking at, we realize that we have a lot of experience in terms of launching products, having the expertise, the technology expertise, the scale. And in that Digital Catalyst program, we're giving opportunity to startups. Of course, I mean, there are marquee startups there. there's a rigorous evaluation, technologies evaluation that goes, that these startups go through. And we see where they can actually benefit from this, from the reach of HP, the experience of HP, the mentoring that HP can bring to the table, and help them scale. So that's one of the things that we have recently done. The first cohort is already on its path. The next is next startup entries are being invited for it. So this is something, since time is short, I could talk more about it. There are a lot of such initiatives that we're working on in terms of looking at how to better contribute to making India a self-reliant digital economy.
Thank you, Ms. Nidhi, for sharing your thoughts and expertise. With this, I conclude today's panel discussion, creating digital public enterprises through technological innovation, as part of the second edition of National PSU Virtual Summit 2021. On behalf of ET government, I sincerely thank our guest panelists, Ms. Shubha N. Bambani, CPO, GAIL India Limited and Engineers India Limited, Dr. Yes, CISO, Indian Oil Corporation Limited, Mr. Anil Rawal, MD and CEO of IntelliSmart Infrastructure, Mr. Sridhar K, General Manager Digital, Kochi Refinery BPCL, and Ms. Nidhi Pandey, CTO, Industry Vertical, HPE India, for sharing their knowledge with ET government. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for putting your points in detail. Let's proceed to the next session. Stay tuned.